I want to kill my daughter. I never used to believe that some people are just born bad, inherently evil. Not until my daughter was born. When she was 2, my mother-in-law, her grandma, was feeding her. "Sweetie," Grandma said playfully, "let Grandma have a little bite of your banana." Melody didn't hesitate. She jabbed the toddler chopstick she was holding directly towards Grandma's eye. Unprepared, Grandma cried out. We rushed her to the hospital. Another time my husband Matthew was teasing her, pretending he was going to take away one of her toys. She shrieked, threw the toy violently onto the floor, and stomped on it until it shattered, screaming hysterically the entire time. When she was 4, a friend brought her little boy over to play. We don't know how it started, but the children began arguing. While we were comforting the crying little boy, Melody slipped silently into the kitchen, grabbed a large vegetable cleaver, and hurled it directly at him. It missed by inches. A moment later and there would have been blood everywhere. She loved seeing our panic, our horrified expressions. The more we screamed or gasped, the happier she became, clapping her hands and giggling with delight. As she grew older, she didn't grow out of it. She simply became more frightening. "We should have another baby," Matthew said one night, his voice heavy with exhaustion and despair. From the hallway, through the sliver of the half-open bedroom door, a single unnerving eye watched us. Initially, I was pregnant with twins. We thought it was a blessing, a double gift from heaven. But during a later checkup, the ultrasound showed only one fetus. After the scan, the gynecologist explained gently, the other embryo didn't develop properly. It was likely absorbed. Absorbed? What does that mean? Absorbed by what? I asked, confused and already grieving the loss. The doctor paused, choosing her words carefully. In layman's terms, sometimes one embryo is weaker or less viable and can't compete for resources. The human body is generally better suited for single pregnancies. In twin pregnancies, there's competition for nutrients. The weaker one often vanishes. But, I protested tearfully, pulling out the earlier ultrasound pictures. When we first found out, both sacs were developing. Their heartbeats, their sizes. They were almost identical. "I'm very sorry," the doctor offered sympathetically. Back home, Matthew comforted me. "One baby was wonderful too," he insisted. I tried to accept it, tried to push down the unsettling feeling. From then on, terrified the remaining fetus might also mysteriously disappear, I became obsessively careful. As the baby grew, my body began to rebel. The morning sickness was relentless, debilitating. I became severely anemic. My doctor stressed the importance of nutrition for the baby's development. My family plied me with rich foods, hearty soups, endless supplements. I forced myself to eat, yet I grew thinner and thinner, my limbs gaunt, making my burgeoning belly seem grotesquely large. At another checkup, the doctor expressed concern about my frail condition, worried the baby wasn't thriving. But the ultrasound revealed the opposite. The fetus was developing perfectly. No, more than perfectly, it was abnormally large. It was as if every nutrient I consumed was being ruthlessly siphoned away, leaving nothing for me. "The baby is getting too big," the doctor warned, her brow furrowed. "You need to control your food intake. Don't eat so much." I saw hesitation in her eyes. A skeletal woman carrying an unusually large fetus. It wasn't normal. A large fetus posed its own risks. Back home, I reduced my food intake, enduring constant gnawing hunger. But whenever I felt hungry, the baby inside me would become violently active, kicking and thrashing as if protesting the lack of sustenance. A few days later, I fainted from anemia and was rushed back to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed severe malnutrition and put me on an 4 drip. Another scan confirmed the fetus was still significantly larger than average. "We'll schedule a C-section," the doctor finally conceded, advising me to resume eating normally. I tried to strike a balance, eating slightly more, hoping to sustain myself without letting the baby grow even larger. By the 7th month, I was skeletal. My cheeks were hollowed, my arms and legs thin and withered. Only my belly remained enormous, unnaturally round. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like some distorted creature from a horror movie poster. I knew pregnancy could be difficult, a trial, but I never imagined this. To ensure both our survival, I spent the final months hospitalized. I had already quit my job around the 3-month mark, unable to cope with the severe pregnancy symptoms. Losing my income placed the entire financial burden on Matthew. He was incredibly supportive, working tirelessly, even taking on a second part-time job to cover the mounting bills. Countless times I silently pleaded with the baby inside me, begging her not to take everything, to leave me something so we could both survive. But a fetus doesn't understand reason. She continued to drain me, relentlessly taking, as if determined to consume me entirely. Her insatiable greed led to repeated hospital stays, endless medical interventions. I felt less than human, a mere vessel being hollowed out. The cost soared, nearing $30,000. My mother-in-law came to stay, helping tirelessly and contributing a significant sum from her own savings. During the C-section, I hemorrhaged badly. I nearly died on the operating table. But finally my daughter was born. She weighed a staggering 11 pounds. The doctor remarked she was the largest newborn he had ever delivered, and this was after my desperate attempts to restrict my diet. Lying weakly in the recovery room, gazing at my daughter's tiny, innocent face, I thought, it's over. The suffering is finally over. Little one, I whispered, my voice raspy, you certainly put Mommy and Daddy through the ringer. You need to be a good girl now, okay? Mommy and Daddy will love you so much. I leaned down to kiss her soft cheek. She seemed to smile, a tiny reflexive movement. Newborns are often red and wrinkled, not conventionally beautiful, but in my eyes she was the most precious angel in the world. I believed the ordeal was finished. I had no idea it was only the terrifying beginning. Weak and exhausted after the C-section, the agony began as the anesthesia wore off, my incision screaming with pain. Melody was placed in a bassinet beside my bed. The nurses encouraged skin-to-skin contact, urging me to hold her, touch her often. Felt impossible. I could barely move, let alone lift my 11-pound daughter. But oh, how I wanted to. The feeling was strange, primal. I wonder if other mothers feel this. I knew intellectually I had a child and I knew I would love her. But that love initially felt distant, filtered, almost like a formulaic obligation. I am a mother, therefore I must love my child. But the moment she was physically there, tangible and real, the love became visceral, overwhelming. This tiny being was suddenly the most important person in my world. Not because books or laws or ethics told me so, but because of an instinct that bloomed inexplicably from within. Wah! A cry erupted from the bassinet. She must be hungry. My mother-in-law bustled over, smiling, lifting the baby and gently placing her beside me. Feeling awkward as a first-time mother, I asked Matthew to draw the privacy curtain before clumsily unbuttoning my gown to nurse her. Without warning, a searing pain shot through me. I cried out involuntarily. It felt like being bitten viciously by a small animal. My daughter, her face serene and angelic, was latched on, causing excruciating pain. It hurt so much, I gasped when the nurse came in. That's normal, she reassured me kindly. Everyone's pain tolerance is different. Some women are more sensitive, especially at the beginning. You'll get used to it. I felt a flush of shame. The woman in the bed next to mine, who had also given birth the same day, nursed her baby with serene calmness. I asked her later if it hurt. A little, she admitted. But it's bearable. Having never done this before, I assumed it was normal, and forced myself to endure the pain. Melody demanded to nurse constantly, the intervals incredibly short. The moment she was put back in her bassinet, she would wail inconsolably. The middle-aged woman visiting the patient in the next bed grew visibly annoyed. Your baby's fussy, she remarked sharply. Maybe you should just keep feeding her. Matthew apologized politely and brought Melody back to me. The instant she latched on, I cried out again. Could you please stop being so dramatic? The woman snapped, her patience gone. We all have babies, we all breastfeed. Nobody else screams like that every single time. The baby doesn't even have teeth yet. How painful can it possibly be? Matthew's face hardened instantly. That's none of your business, he retorted coldly. The woman started arguing with him. Your wife is disturbing my daughter. My grandson is a good baby, sleeps peacefully, but your daughter's constant crying keeps waking him up, and then my daughter can't rest either. Matthew clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Matthew, I pleaded softly. He turned abruptly and strode out of the room. A short while later, a nurse arrived and moved us to a private room. I worried about the extra cost. Matthew gently smoothed my hair back from my forehead. I picked up some extra freelance work recently, he said softly. Made about $1,000. Enough for you and the baby to have some peace and quiet. Oh, Matthew. Tears sprang to my eyes. It was strange. I hadn't cried during the grueling pregnancy, hadn't cried through the agonizing post-surgery pain. But his quiet gesture of care undid me completely. Maybe the stories about postpartum hormones making you overly emotional were true. Matthew was incredibly attentive, constantly fussing over me. My mother-in-law was gentle and accommodating, always deferring to my wishes. Compared to the horror stories I heard from other new mothers in the hospital, Families arguing because the baby wasn't a boy. Relatives focusing only on the infant while ignoring the mother's needs. I felt exceptionally lucky. So lucky, in fact, that continuing to cry out during feedings felt embarrassingly self-indulgent. Going home, Matthew barely left my side. He hovered constantly, anticipating my needs. He rarely held Melody unless I specifically asked him to. A flicker of worry sparked within me. Matthew, I asked hesitantly one afternoon, are you disappointed she's a girl? Was he unhappy we hadn't had a son? He gently pinched my cheek. Don't be silly, he murmured. As long as you're the one who gave birth to her, I love her. Relief washed over me. My mother-in-law showed absolutely no signs of gender preference. She efficiently managed the household chores, laundry, cooking, cleaning without a single complaint or inappropriate comment. She was remarkably sensible and supportive. It was hard to reconcile this capable, unassuming woman with the pampered socialite she had apparently been just a few years prior, before her husband's business collapsed and he ran into legal trouble. Her resilience in adapting to their drastically changed circumstances was truly admirable. Our little family seemed harmonious. Bolstered by the support of Matthew and my mother-in-law, I tried harder to suppress the pain during feedings. But within a few days, the area where Melody nursed became raw, cracked, and infected. Only then did Matthew and his mother fully realize my cries of pain hadn't been mere dramatics. It was genuinely agonizing. Matthew immediately insisted I stop breastfeeding and switch to formula. But Melody vehemently refused the bottle. It wasn't just a preference for breast milk I felt. It was as if she actively enjoyed hurting me. No more. Matthew finally told her sternly, his patience snapping. He resolutely prevented me from nursing her, despite her frantic wails. I cried along with her. Heartbroken, but Matthew held firm, standing impassively nearby with the bottle. After a full day of refusing, hunger finally forced Melody to relent and accept the formula. Feeding wasn't her only challenging trait. She was also incredibly fussy, rarely sleeping for long stretches. Neither Matthew nor I got any decent sleep. He still had to go to work during the day. I urged him to sleep in the study, but he refused, insisting he wanted to stay with me, unwilling to leave me to suffer alone. Even exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, the man was still strikingly handsome. I was considered attractive, but his features were even more refined, almost delicate. Honestly, if he were to dress as a woman, he'd make me look plain by comparison. If his family hadn't lost their fortune, if his father hadn't gotten into trouble, someone like me would likely never have had the chance to marry him. Seeing how exhausted I was, Matthew suggested hiring a maternity nurse. You saw. I initially refused, worried about the expense. My prolonged hospital stays had already cost so much. But he insisted. The experienced maternity nurse confirmed my growing unease. Melody, she declared, was the most difficult baby she had ever cared for. Melody screamed inconsolably whenever I wasn't holding her. The nurse couldn't soothe her at all. Defeated, I quickly let the nurse go and resigned myself to caring for Melody with my mother-in-law's help. After several exhausting months, Melody's nighttime fussiness gradually subsided, bringing a much-needed sense of peace to the household. We bought her countless toys, including a classic Barbie doll. One afternoon, I stepped away to use the restroom. When I returned, I found the Barbie doll lying on the floor, its head twisted clean off. Maybe it was just poor quality, Matthew suggested, ever the optimist. He promptly bought her a collection of sturdy-looking toy chicks and ducks. Within days, the chick's wings were ripped off, the duck's legs torn away. A disturbing pattern began to emerge. Melody didn't seem interested in playing with her toys. Her fascination lay in dismantling them, destroying them. I mentioned this to my friend Chloe, whose son was around Melody's age. Oh, kids are like that, Chloe reassured me breezily. Mine loves taking things apart too. Was it really normal? As a first-time mother, I had no frame of reference. I tried to believe it was just a phase. One sunny afternoon, I took Melody for a walk in the park. A vendor was selling tiny newly hatched chicks dyed bright, unnatural colors, popular novelty for children. Melody seemed fascinated. I held her close to the pen. Look, sweetie, I pointed. Look at the little chicks. Melody giggled, reached out a chubby hand, snatched a chick, and in one swift, shocking motion twisted its neck. It's normal. Young children don't have a concept of reverence for life. They don't understand their own strength. That was the consensus when I recounted the chick incident to Chloe and my mother-in-law. Their explanations were identical. Baby, we don't hurt little animals, okay? I told myself to relax, repeating the lesson gently but firmly to Melody. She just giggled. Soon Melody turned one, and her inherently selfish nature became glaringly apparent. Everything was hers. Toys, food, clothes. No one else was allowed to touch them. Any attempt to take something resulted in explosive tantrums. Initially, we didn't worry too much. Parenting experts and experienced parents alike told us that extreme possessiveness is normal in young children. An instinctive phase. The advice was to indulge their desires before the age of 2, give them whatever they wanted within reason to foster a sense of security. Failing to meet their demands, they warned, could lead to personality defects later in life. So we complied. We gave Melody almost everything she asked for. Matthew made sure to spend quality time with her every evening after work. Within our means, we showered her with love and attention. When Melody was a little over 1, Chloe, who was expecting her second child, asked if I had any old baby clothes or toys she could have. While sorting through Melody's outgrown items, I didn't think to hide what I was doing. Who considers the feelings of a 1-year-old in such matters? Melody, however, immediately began wailing. She toddled unsteadily over, clinging to the sofa for support, and tried desperately to snatch a toy from my hand. A toy she hadn't shown any interest in for months. Thinking she suddenly wanted it, I put that toy down and picked up another. She immediately lunged for the new one. Whatever I touched, she demanded. If I stopped sorting, she'd wander off to play with something else entirely. Seeing how attached she seemed to the toys, I decided to focus on the clothes instead. I packed them neatly into a large bag and placed it by the sofa. When Chloe arrived later, I handed her the bag. Wah-ah! Melody erupted into ear-splitting screams. She rushed over, grabbed the bag, clinging to it fiercely, refusing to let Chloe take it. We tried waiting until she was distracted, but the moment anyone touched the bag, the hysterics resumed. Finally, she dragged the bag into her playpen area, guarding it like a dragon hoarding treasure. No one was allowed near it. Chloe left empty-handed, slightly bemused, forced to seek hand-me-downs elsewhere. When I described the incident to Matthew and his mother, they remained unconcerned, confident she would grow out of it. Before the age of 2, the consensus remained, indulge her. Okay, hopefully she would change as she got older. Melody turned 2. She didn't change. If anything, her selfishness intensified. We tried encouraging her to share, but she flatly refused. During playdates, she wouldn't share her toys and constantly tried to snatch things from other children. One afternoon, when she was a little over 2, my mother-in-law was feeding her lunch at home. Melody was eating banana slices with her toddler chopsticks. Grandma leaned closer playfully. Sweetie, let Grandma have just a little bite of your banana. Without waiting for permission, Grandma took a tiny nibble. Melody shrieked instantly, a high-pitched, furious sound, and thrust the chopstick she held directly into Grandma's eye. Grandma screamed, clutching her face. I froze horrified. This was the grandmother who had cared for her since birth, and she couldn't even tolerate sharing a tiny piece of banana? We rushed Grandma to the hospital again. Thankfully, the doctors saved her eye, but her vision in that eye was permanently impaired. My mother-in-law, ever gentle and forgiving, insisted it wasn't Melody's fault, just an accident. She even claimed her eyesight was already declining due to age anyway. When Matthew came home and learned what happened, he was furious. He wanted to spank Melody's hand. My mother-in-law and I stopped him, both believing physical punishment wasn't the answer, that guidance and teaching were needed. To teach her about sharing, we started deliberately asking for her things, trying to gently test her boundaries. Matthew picked up her favorite doll. Sweetie, he asked softly, can Daddy have this doll? Melody screamed, snatching at the doll. Matthew offered her a small piece of cake as a trade. She refused, growing increasingly agitated. Finally, in a fit of rage, she grabbed the doll, threw it on the floor and stomped on it furiously, screaming all the while. She would rather destroy her possessions than share them, even with her own father. The message was clear. What was hers stayed hers, period. It escalated. At mealtimes, if she decided she particularly liked a certain dish, no one else was allowed to touch it. If there was fruit she favored, nobody else could have a single piece without triggering an epic tantrum, complete with blood-curdling screams that echoed through the entire apartment building. We tried every technique recommended by parenting experts. Nothing worked. She remained utterly unwilling to share, profoundly selfish. It wasn't just selfishness. It was a complete lack of empathy. We, her mother, father, grandmother, were the closest people in her life, catering to her every whim. Yet she wouldn't share anything, not even a crumb. When I was sick and pleaded with her to be quiet so I could rest, she ignored me completely, continuing her noisy play as if I didn't exist. Perhaps I reasoned desperately, she was just too young to understand. But even at 3, then 4, she remained the same. Never showing consideration for others. Never offering a shred of concern. Not even for me, her own mother. Playing with other children inevitably led to fights. She constantly snatched toys, and if she didn't get what she wanted, she'd throw herself on the ground, kicking and screaming. We never taught her these behaviors. She seemed to have invented them herself. Other parents worried about their children being bullied by her. I lived in constant fear of her bullying others. Because she frequently hurt other children, and no amount of reasoning or explaining worked, my mother-in-law and I reluctantly agreed with Matthew that some form of discipline was necessary. After another incident where she hit a child and the parent came complaining to our door, I snapped. I grabbed her small hand and smacked it lightly with a ruler, telling her firmly that hitting others was unacceptable and would result in consequences. She erupted, howling, throwing herself onto the floor, writhing and screaming. My mother-in-law and I stood watching, resolute, determined not to give in. She continued her tantrum, the noise deafening. Losing my patience, I grabbed her hand again and gave it 2 more light taps. "You're almost 4 years old," I scolded, trying to keep my voice steady. "You cannot keep hitting people. And stop this constant screaming." Melody struggled violently, shrieking piercingly. The moment I released her hand, she scrambled over to the coffee table, snatched the fruit knife lying there, and lunged towards me. "Kill you! Kill you!" she screamed, slashing wildly. I was too stunned to react properly. Thankfully, she was small, her strength limited. I instinctively threw up my hand to block her, the blade slicing across the back of my hand, drawing blood. My mother-in-law rushed forward, wrestled the knife away, and pulled Melody back. Held securely in Grandma's arms, Melody continued to scream and thrash, yelling that she wanted to kill me. After that terrifying incident, we removed all knives and sharp objects from accessible areas. Her chilling cries of "kill you" echoed in my mind, leaving a deep psychological scar. I searched online frantically, finding articles about a curse-sensitive period in children aged 3 to 6 where they experiment with bad words and threats without fully understanding their meaning, a phase they supposedly grow out of. Melody hadn't used swear words before, hadn't threatened me like that before. Maybe I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. After the hand-smacking incident, Melody seemed to curb her aggression slightly, but only slightly. She developed a deep resentment towards me. Whenever Matthew came home, she would cling to him, whining, "Daddy, Mommy hit me. Mommy's bad. Daddy, divorce her. We don't want her." I was shocked. Where did such a young child even learn the word divorce? Matthew's face grew stern. "You hurt Mommy," he reprimanded her sharply. "And you have the nerve to complain?" Melody burst into tears and ran to her grandmother. From then on, she clung to Grandma, avoiding both Matthew and me. Soon after, we enrolled Melody, now 4, in kindergarten. On her very first day, the teacher called me. Melody had hit another child. This became a recurring nightmare. I lost count of the number of times I rushed to the kindergarten to apologize to teachers, to other parents. Sometimes the frustration and helplessness reduced me to tears. I followed all the parenting advice diligently, yet she remained defiant. We never modeled aggression. The smacking incident was an act of desperation. Why was my daughter so prone to violence? If it were just hitting, perhaps it would be manageable. But her fascination with weapons persisted. Where did she learn it? At 2, she nearly blinded her grandmother with chopsticks. 3, she tried to stab me. Now she seemed increasingly comfortable using knives, sticks, anything she could find to attack others. I lived in constant fear that one day she would seriously injure someone or worse. We meticulously removed any potential weapons from the house, screened her books and cartoons for violent content. The entire family took turns reasoning with her, combined with occasional slaps on the hand or bottom. Finally, the overt use of weapons seemed to stop. One afternoon, Chloe brought her son over for a playdate. The 2 children were playing together in Melody's room, while Chloe and I chatted in the living room. Suddenly, Chloe's son burst out of the room, running towards us, crying hysterically. While Chloe and I were comforting the distraught little boy, Melody called out, "Mommy," a couple of times from her room. Preoccupied, I didn't answer immediately. With a furious shriek, Melody stormed out of her room, marched straight into the kitchen, grabbed the large vegetable cleaver from the knife block, and threw it with all her might towards Chloe's son. If Chloe hadn't reacted instantly, pulling her son out of the way, the consequences would have been horrific. "Melody!" I screamed, grabbing her. "What are you doing?" For the first time I spanked her hard, really hard, driven by sheer terror and anger. She wailed, struggling violently against my grip. Chloe, pale and shaken, quickly gathered her son and left. When Matthew and my mother-in-law returned home, Melody immediately ran to them, tearfully complaining that I had hit her. Hearing the full story, Matthew grabbed her and gave her another severe spanking. "I'll kill you all one day," she screamed through her tears. After the double dose of physical punishment, Melody did become noticeably quieter, more subdued. I began to seriously question the parenting experts. Reasoning and positive reinforcement seemed utterly ineffective. Perhaps violence was the only language she understood? If she didn't experience the fear of being subjected to violence herself, how could she ever comprehend the pain she inflicted on others? Chloe never let her son play with Melody again. None of the neighborhood children would come near her either. Melody became isolated, lonely. Seeing her solitude, my anger softened into pity. I started taking her out more often, trying to expose her to positive experiences, hoping to foster some sunshine in her dark disposition. I read her fairy tales, stories of heroes, hoping she might emulate their positive traits. She listened attentively, her behavior seemingly improving. After a period of relative calm, Melody came home from school one day demanding a specific pencil case. She dragged me to a high-end stationery store near the elementary school and pointed to an elaborate character-themed case. I glanced at the price tag. Over $100. Ridiculous. For a pencil case? It was highway robbery. I asked why she wanted it. "Lily has one," she stated simply. "So I want one too." "You already have 2 perfectly good pencil cases," I told her firmly. "We're not buying another one." I wasn't usually stingy, but this felt excessive and unnecessary. Melody immediately launched into a full-blown tantrum, crying and screaming. Eventually, I had to physically carry her out of the store. The very next day, her teacher called me. Melody had snatched the coveted pencil case from her classmate, Lily. Not only that, she had pushed Lily down a flight of stairs. Fortunately, the stairs weren't very high, and Lily wasn't seriously injured. By the time I reached the school, my legs were trembling uncontrollably. Melody vehemently denied pushing anyone. She was young, perhaps she didn't understand the implications, but the hallway security camera had captured the entire incident clearly. Yet, even when shown the footage, Melody stubbornly refused to admit fault. Back home, we disciplined Melody again, forbidding her from snatching things or hurting others. My mother-in-law suggested just buying the pencil case to keep the peace, but Matthew and I stood firm. If we yielded to her every demand, what kind of person would she become? A few days later, Melody came home proudly displaying the exact pencil case she'd coveted. I demanded to know where she got it. "Someone gave it to me," she replied nonchalantly. Assumed another child had innocently gifted it, not understanding its value, and worried the child's parents would be upset. I told Melody she had to return it. She flatly refused. 2 days later, the mother of a boy in Melody's class called me. It turned out Melody had convinced the little boy to use his allowance money to buy the pencil case for her. The crucial detail: the boy didn't have enough money. Melody had then persuaded him to steal money from his grandmother's purse to make up the difference. He stole the money, bought the $1,000 pencil case, and gave it to her. Melody, having inherited her father's striking looks, was a remarkably beautiful child, already showing signs of becoming a stunning woman. People were naturally drawn to her. Several little boys in her class were eager to be her friend. I was horrified to realize she was already capable of manipulating others for personal gain at such a young age. When I confronted Melody, she denied everything. I felt utterly drained, defeated. All the past incidents flooded my mind. I began to truly grapple with the horrifying possibility: are some people just born evil? Is it possible to have a child who is fundamentally incapable of goodness, no matter how much love and guidance they receive? We, Matthew, my mother-in-law, myself, were all gentle, calm people. Our home was harmonious. We never swore, never fought physically. We tried to meet Melody's needs, showered her with affection. Even when she provoked me beyond endurance, I rarely resorted to physical discipline. We exposed her only to positive environments, spent quality time with her, never neglecting her. We weren't wealthy, but we always prioritized her material needs within reason. We diligently taught her right from wrong, shared stories of role models, encouraged learning. Yet my daughter had become this selfish, greedy, manipulative. It felt like a malignancy she carried from the womb. Just as she had ruthlessly drained my nutrients during pregnancy, she now seemed determined to drain the world around her, demanding constant appeasement. seeking to control and consume everything and everyone. She terrified me. Throughout Melody's kindergarten years, I lived in a state of constant anxiety, dreading the next phone call, the next incident. Perhaps, because of the stair-pushing incident, other children avoided her. She became quieter at school, seemingly causing less trouble. But that was just my wishful thinking. She hadn't changed. She had simply learned to lie to hide her true nature, to commit her transgressions more covertly. A normal child feels guilt after wrongdoing, learns from correction. My daughter learned only to conceal her actions better, ensuring she left no evidence, no witnesses. For a while, she put on a convincing performance of good behavior. Believing she had genuinely turned a corner, I even rewarded her with a beautiful dress she desperately wanted. When she started elementary school, Matthew received a promotion, improving our financial situation. Mindful of the pencil case incident, we tried to be more generous materially, perhaps hoping to quell her insatiable desires. We followed the old adage, raise boys lean, raise girls rich. We enrolled her in Latin dance classes, hoping it would channel her energy positively, cultivate some grace and discipline. She was beautiful and the teacher adored her, praising her natural talent. Melody seemed to genuinely enjoy dancing, practicing diligently, showing rare enthusiasm. As the National Day holiday approached, Melody grew excited. The dance studio traditionally organized performances at malls or schools for holidays, showcasing the students' talents complete with awards and accolades. While seemingly minor to adults, these events were hugely important to the children, and parents naturally supported their involvement. Melody constantly boasted she would be the lead dancer. However, another girl, Sophie, proved to be slightly more skilled, and the teacher began favoring her for the lead role. Melody was furious, constantly complaining about Sophie, speaking ill of her behind her back. I tried to be her friend, avoiding lectures, but her jealousy was so intense, her words so venomous, I eventually had to reprimand her. She instantly recognized her mistake, flashing a sweet, innocent smile. "Mommy, I was wrong," she chirped penitently. After that, she stopped confiding in me, presenting only a perfectly cheerful, well-behaved facade. A couple of days later, I sensed something furtive about Melody's behavior. She attended dance class 3 times a week. One afternoon, I went to pick her up, only to find she had already left early. I asked the teacher, who said Melody told her I had called and said it was okay to leave. Alarmed, I rushed outside, searching frantically. Down the street, quite far from the dance studio, I saw a crowd gathered. An accident. My heart plummeted. I ran towards the commotion. Standing on the curb, trembling violently, was Melody. She saw me and flung herself into my arms, sobbing, "Mommy." Across the road, a young girl lay motionless in a pool of blood. It was Sophie, the girl who was likely to be the lead dancer. I desperately tried to deny the connection, the chilling coincidence. It wasn't Melody. It couldn't be. But the timing, the circumstances. I was trembling uncontrollably, terrified Melody was responsible, equally terrified someone else would discover it. If she had done this, what would become of her? What would become of us? She was only 8 years old. No, impossible. It was an accident. It must have been. Back home, I recounted the events to Matthew, my voice shaking. His face grew dark, grim. He spoke to Melody alone later. Afterwards, he told me curtly, it wasn't her. Soon after, the official police report confirmed it was a tragic accident. Sophie had apparently darted out into the road unexpectedly and was struck by a speeding car. Thank God. Thank God. Relief washed over me, so intense I burst into tears. But Sophie's mother refused to accept the police findings. She insisted her daughter would never leave the studio early without permission. That day, she had been running slightly late. Sophie hadn't waited. Instead, she had left with Melody. That, the grieving mother argued, was highly unusual. Confronted by Sophie's mother, Melody tearfully explained, Sophie wanted snacks. She asked me to go with her. She said her mommy didn't love her or care about her, and she was going to walk home alone. Sophie's mother looked as though she'd been struck by lightning, collapsing into heart-wrenching sobs. I pulled Melody aside later. Why would you say such things? I demanded, horrified. Couldn't you see how much pain her mother was in? But I was just telling the truth, Melody replied, her expression wide-eyed and innocent. Adults tend to believe children don't lie, especially under such tragic circumstances. Sophie's mother eventually dropped her suspicions about Melody, instead pursuing a lawsuit against the dance studio for negligence. The studio ended up paying a substantial settlement and subsequently closed down. Nearly 2 years passed. The trauma slowly began to fade, my anxieties easing. Then one evening when he thought I was ready, Matthew told me the truth. It was her, Amelia. I froze, staring at him. She was so young. I stammered, clinging to denial. The police said it was an accident. Sophie ran out on her own. Matthew sighed heavily. Melody asked Sophie to leave with her, lying about getting snacks. They told the teacher their moms were picking them. The teacher was busy, trusted them and let them go. When they got near the road, Melody suggested they race to see who was faster. They love to play, they don't pay attention to traffic. Melody didn't intend to kill her, Amelia. She just wanted to hurt her. Maybe push her so she'd fall and break something, making her unable to dance the lead role. She didn't expect that car to come speeding along right at that moment. That wasn't an accident. I interrupted fiercely, the horrific truth crashing down on me. That wasn't an accident at all. Why didn't you tell me sooner? No, listen, Matthew insisted, grabbing my shoulders. It was an accident in the sense that Melody didn't intend for Sophie to die. She thought pushing her on a busy street would just cause a minor injury, unnoticed in the crowd. I didn't believe him. I knew my daughter. If she just wanted Sophie to fall, I argued, my voice rising, she could have pushed her down the stairs. She's done it before. But there are cameras on the stairs, Matthew countered wearily. She got caught on camera at kindergarten, remember? She wouldn't risk that again. She had to lure her outside. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt sick, suffocated. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered, my voice trembling. Matthew bowed his head, his shoulders slumping. What good would it have done? What could we do? She's our daughter, Amelia. I stared at him, speechless, my body trembling violently. Let it go, Matthew pleaded softly, trying to hold me. Just let it be in the past. I pushed him away, shoving him hard. Then why tell me now? I screamed, finally breaking down completely. You should have kept it hidden forever. Why tell me now? He looked at me, his own eyes filled with pain. Because I knew you suspected, Amelia. You've known deep down that Melody was involved in Sophie's death. You haven't been eating, haven't been sleeping properly for 2 years. I couldn't watch you torture yourself anymore. I had to tell you the truth. I collapsed onto the floor, silent tears streaming down my face. My daughter, my beautiful daughter, had killed someone. She truly was born evil. After Matthew told me the truth, a permanent shadow fell over me. I could no longer look at my daughter with love or affection, only a chilling mixture of fear and revulsion. Over the past 2 years, Melody had presented a perfect facade. She excelled academically, her stunning beauty making her a popular figure at school. I had allowed myself to hope she was maturing, changing. Now I suspected it was all an act. To confirm my fears, I started discreetly investigating her activities at school. It didn't take long to uncover the disturbing reality. She ruled her social circle like a tyrant. Anyone who dared cross her became the target of vicious bullying, orchestrated by a small group loyal to her. Crucially, she never got her own hands dirty anymore. She directed others to do her bidding, maintaining her own image of innocence. Submit or be destroyed was her unspoken motto. No wonder the complaints from other parents had stopped. Melody herself wasn't technically doing anything wrong. The discovery plunged me into despair. It felt hopeless. My daughter would never change. That evening, Matthew and I argued again, the tension over Melody finally boiling over. In the heat of the moment, overcome by emotion, I screamed, I don't want a daughter like this. Matthew tried to soothe me, then suddenly hesitantly asked, What if we had another baby? I froze, Lungliisha, then fell silent. Matthew had always preferred it being just the two of us. If I hadn't desperately wanted a child, we might never have had one. I certainly hadn't planned on having two. But now, the thought of a fresh start, a different child, it held a desperate appeal. After our argument subsided, we realized Melody's bedroom door was slightly ajar. Matthew went to check. He returned, his face grim. Melody was eavesdropping. He stated flatly. I didn't know how he knew, but both he and Melody possessed an uncanny intelligence, an ability to deduce truths from the smallest clues. My heart clenched with panic. I called Melody's name. Silence. We searched the house, then the neighborhood, calling her name frantically. No sign of her. Just as raw panic began to consume us, my phone rang loudly. It was Melody. Mommy. Her voice sounded small and tearful over the line. I know you and Daddy don't like me. Since you want a little brother instead, I guess I'll just go die. No, we don't want a brother. Melody, where are you? I pleaded desperately. She hung up. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped me. Fear for her safety, the primal instinct of a mother. And a deeper, colder fear, the realization that my daughter was capable of using the threat of suicide as a weapon. Melody. Matthew and I ran through the streets, shouting her name into the darkness. Across a busy intersection, I glimpsed a familiar small figure darting between cars. Matthew saw her too and sprinted after her. The screech of tires tearing against asphalt. A sickening thud. Matthew's body flew through the air, tumbling several meters before landing in a crumpled heap. Dark, viscous blood pooled beneath him like spilled paint. The world tilted, spun violently. My mind went blank, white noise roaring in my ears. The only sensation was a rising wave of nausea. People surged forward. Lights flashed. Sirens wailed. The events that followed are a blur, shrouded in a fog of shock and grief. When I regained some clarity, Matthew was home from the hospital. He held my hand weakly. "It's okay," he whispered. Tears streamed down my face. "You're alive. You're okay." I sobbed with relief. The official cause of the accident was drunk driving. If the driver hadn't been intoxicated, Matthew might have been fine. But he wasn't fine. After extensive surgery, Matthew was paralyzed from the waist down. Unable to walk, confined to a wheelchair. I made a decision. We would leave the city, move to our old family house in the countryside. The quiet environment would be better for Matthew's recovery. And Melody. I couldn't risk letting her out into the world again, couldn't risk her harming anyone else. Melody, perhaps sensing the gravity of her actions, offered no resistance. She quietly packed her things and came with us to the remote country house. It was an old, slightly dilapidated Western-style villa, built years ago, initially intended as an investment property, hoping for demolition and redevelopment. But the property market stalled. It remained unrented, undeveloped, just sitting there waiting. In this isolated house, the three of us began a quiet, tense existence. With Matthew paralyzed, I became his full-time caregiver, bathing him, talking to him, dressing him, tending to his needs. To force Melody to confront the consequences of her actions, I assigned her tasks: feeding her father, bringing him drinks, helping change his clothes, assisting with his personal hygiene. She managed it for about a year. Then the resentment festered. Still just a child herself, she quickly tired of the relentless, unpleasant chores. She began complaining, crying, refusing to help. "You caused this," I yelled, enraged by her selfishness. "Shouldn't you bear the responsibility?" "But I didn't know this would happen," she wailed back defensively. Matthew sighed wearily from his bed. "Amelia, leave her be. Don't make it harder on her." His words felt like ice in my veins. They say even the most devoted child can falter under the strain of long-term caregiving. But it had barely been a year, and he was her father, paralyzed because of her. Melody continued her justifications. "The accident was the driver's fault. He was drunk. You can't blame me. If you want revenge, go after the driver. Why are you torturing me?" Selfish. Utterly, despicably selfish. In that moment, the thought resurfaced, cold and sharp. I want to kill her. This inherently flawed, self-absorbed creature didn't deserve to exist. A furious argument erupted between us. I lost control and beat her, harder than ever before, hitting her until she bled. Matthew watched helplessly from his bed, pleading, "Stop it, Amelia. Don't hit her. This ungrateful brat needs to be taught a lesson." I screamed back, consumed by rage. After venting my fury, I stormed back inside to tend to Matthew, leaving Melody sobbing on the floor. When I came out later, she was gone. Good riddance. Let her disappear forever, I thought coldly. I couldn't rely on her for anything in this life. People talk about raising children for support. In old age, about daughters being caring. But Melody? A born monster, incapable of empathy. Expecting her to care for me when I'm old? A fool's dream. "So what you've been telling me?" Detective Miller leaned forward. His eyes narrowed, sharp as a predator's under the harsh fluorescent lights of the small interrogation room. "Is that the body in your yard? Your daughter did it?" I clutched my floral print skirt tightly, my knuckles white. "It must have been her," I whispered, my voice trembling. The female officer standing beside him glanced at me, her expression unreadable, complex. Detective Miller checked his watch. 1 hour, he stated calmly. "I've just listened to a fascinating, if disturbing story about the birth and disappearance of a demonic little girl." "Thank you for listening," I said earnestly, my hand still twisting the fabric in my lap. "But it's not just a story. It's all true." Miller offered a faint, non-committal smile. I watched him nervously, wondering what he would ask next. Earlier that morning, A swarm of police officers had arrived unexpectedly, inviting me down to the station for questioning. Later, they unearthed a badly decomposed human body buried in my backyard. I had no idea how it got there. After Melody left, life had settled into a quiet, albeit strained routine. Just me and Matthew caring for him, clinging to each other. Despite his paralysis, I never resented him. I held on to the hope that medical advancements might one day allow him to walk again. We could have a normal life then, just the two of us, no more children. But the police arrival, the discovery of the body, shattered that fragile peace. So, Miller continued, ticking points off on his fingers, you claim your daughter killed her twin in the womb, nearly drained you dry during pregnancy, but you viciously after birth tried to blind her grandmother with chopsticks at 2, attacked you with a knife at 3, threw a cleaver at a child at 4, pushed another child downstairs at 5, and caused the death of a classmate at 8. She didn't blind Grandma, I corrected softly. Her vision was just impaired. Miller smirked. Right. Nearly blinded her. And later she caused the accident that paralyzed your husband. So, it stands to reason. He leaned closer, his voice dropping slightly. That an 11-year-old girl like that could certainly murder an adult man? I pressed my lips together tightly. If she didn't do it, who else could have? Miller smiled again, a cold, humorless expression. Why not you, Mrs. Kane? That's impossible. I cried, flustered. Why would I kill anyone? The deceased, Miller stated flatly, was positively identified as the drunk driver who hit your husband. You certainly had a motive. No, it wasn't me. It was Melody. Only a born monster, a natural-born killer, could do something like that. I slammed my hand on the table for emphasis. Miller remained unfazed. All right then. How about we bring your daughter in? Melody. I blinked, startled. You found her. Indeed. You can see her now. Miller nodded to the female officer beside him. A few moments later, the door opened and Officer Davis led a small, frail figure into the room. The bright light illuminated her face. It was Melody, but terribly changed. She was painfully thin, her cheeks hollowed, her hair dry and brittle. She looked haunted, as if she had endured immense suffering. Where have you been? The question escaped me, a surge of maternal concern overriding everything else. Seeing her looking so wretched tugged at my heart. You don't know how worried Mommy was after you left? I said, my eyes filling with tears. Daddy said you'd be in danger out there alone. He wanted me to look for you, but he needs constant care. I couldn't leave him. Melody stared at me with wide, terrified eyes filled with a strange mixture of pain and confusion. After a long silent moment, she spoke, her voice hoarse and cracking. Wake up. She stared intently at me, tears now streaming down her gaunt face, her lips trembling. Daddy. Daddy? I blinked, confused, looking around the small room. Daddy's at home, sweetie, I said gently, frowning. He's paralyzed, remember? He can't be here. Mentioning Matthew jolted me back to reality. I'd been at the station for hours. He was alone, helpless. How would he manage? I need to go home. I stood up abruptly, the handcuffs rattling on my wrists. Let me go. Can't you take these things off? I demanded angrily. Afraid not. Detective Miller shook his head firmly. Mr. Kane, you're under arrest for murder. We can't let you leave. Mr. Kane. What are you talking about? My name is Amelia Kane. My husband is waiting for me. I need to take care of him. A sudden, horrifying realization dawned. I rounded on Melody, my voice sharp with accusation. You're not police officers, are you? Melody, what have you done now? You're getting worse and worse. Melody covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. Daddy, please wake up. You're not Mommy. You're a man. Melody, stop talking nonsense. I raged, fury boiling inside me. Why don't you just die? Melody recoiled as if struck. Officer Davis quickly put a protective arm around her, glaring coldly at me. Mr. Kane, if your daughter hadn't been resourceful enough to break a window and escape, she very likely would have died at your hands. What are you talking about? I shouted, bewildered. Officer Davis calmly produced a small compact mirror and held it up in front of my face. The smooth surface reflected a woman's image, long flowing hair, a floral dress, pale skin, red lips. Very beautiful. Huh. See. I pointed triumphantly at the reflection. I am a woman. You were wrong. You're trying to trick me. Detective Miller sighed, clearly losing patience. He stepped forward and with one swift movement, yanked the wig from my head. I reached up instinctively, touching my own short, cropped hair. A horrified scream escaped my lips. The reflection screamed too, but the face was wrong. Broad shoulders, a flat chest. As the mouth opened in a scream, the bright red lipstick cracked grotesquely, looking animalistic. Miller wasn't finished. He grabbed a handful of tissues and roughly scrubbed at my face, wiping away the makeup. He held the mirror up again. "Now," he asked quietly, "are you still a woman?" The mirror reflected a man's face. Familiar, yet distorted by shock and confusion. My husband's face. My face. No, wait. If I was Matthew, then who was the Matthew at home? The paralyzed Matthew I'd been caring for. My husband. I whispered, trembling violently. The husband at home. Detective Miller's expression softened slightly, mingled with disgust. "This," he said quietly, pushing several photographs across the table towards me, "is the husband at home." The photo showed a woman's body, curled up peacefully inside a large chest freezer. It was Amelia, my wife. After Mrs. Kane died in the car accident, Miller explained methodically, you located and murdered the driver you blamed. You brought both bodies back to the old house along with your daughter. You buried the driver in the backyard. You began dressing as your wife, Amelia, living as her. Your features are fine enough that with makeup you passed convincingly. You forced your daughter, Melody, to care for Amelia's corpse, feeding it, bathing it, dressing it. When she refused, you beat her brutally. When she fought back, you nearly killed her, then locked her in a small outbuilding. She almost starved before managing to break a window and escape to call us. If she hadn't, we might never have known. Miller's words hammered at me, shattering the carefully constructed reality inside my head. Fragmented images flickered, the blinding streetlights, the sickening crunch of impact, the body tumbling, the dark pool of blood spreading. But the face lying in the blood, it was Amelia. My Amelia. My mind reeled, reeling back. The shock, the unbearable grief. Then, a blurring, a dissociation. And later, yes, luring the driver. Killing him. Dressing in Amelia's clothes, using her perfume, trying to keep her close, keep her alive somehow. You couldn't accept your wife's death, Miller continued, his voice softer now. You gradually began to believe you were Amelia. You even altered your own memories, convincing yourself you were the one injured in the accident. Perhaps subconsciously that's what you wished for. You wished you had died and Amelia had lived. I covered my face, hot tears streaming through my fingers. Mr. Kane, Miller said gently, you're suffering from severe psychological trauma. Your daughter's testimony confirms it. It's time to confess. I looked up sharply, glaring at Melody, a raw scream tearing from my throat. It was you. You killed your mother. You're the evil one. The born bat seed. Melody flinched, trembling. Daddy, she sobbed. You and Mommy were arguing that night. Mommy ran out because she was angry with you. That's why she died. My eyes widened, my breath catching in my throat. You're lying. I roared, shaking my head violently. I had no memory of that. None at all. Liar. You're the bat seed. You already killed Sophie. You're evil. I lunged forward, consumed by rage. Hands grabbed me, restraining me. He's clearly very unwell. Miller, what do we do now? Detain him for now. TSK. A genuine psychotic break involving homicide, tough case for the victim's family. And he's still blaming his daughter. When I regained some semblance of composure, I was in a secure holding cell. They told me my mother had arrived. Grandma. Through the bars I saw her standing there, her eyes filled with tears. She told me she was here to take Melody home with her. I scrambled towards the bars, gripping them tightly. Mom, you can't take her. She's evil. She'll destroy everything. Mom flinched back, startled. Two guards nearby tensed, gripping their batons warily. I forced myself to calm down, trying to speak rationally. Mom, please listen. Send her away somewhere. She'll hurt you, she'll hurt everyone. I began, desperately recounting all of Melody's past transgressions, pouring out the years of fear and horror. Mom listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I finally fell silent, exhausted, she asked quietly, Matthew, don't you remember? I stared at her, confused. Remember what? She slowly raised her hand, covering her right eye. Son, she said softly, her voice filled with sadness. It seems you've forgotten everything. Forgotten what? She sighed deeply. My eye, you did that, Matthew. When you were 2 years old. You were always incredibly possessive. No one could touch your things. I took one tiny bite of your banana, and you stabbed my eye with your chopsticks. I gaped at her, stunned. I poked your eye. I stammered. Yes. Then the knife? Throwing the cleaver? Pushing the little boy? Mom stood up, her expression a mixture of pity and resolve. Matthew, you're sick. Those things you remember Melody doing, those were things you did as a child. You've projected your own past onto her. I staggered back as if struck. Disbelief warred with a dawning, sickening horror. It was me? I was the one? Yes, Matthew. It was all you, Mom confirmed gently but firmly. I clutched my head, letting out a strangled cry. This was the truth? This was the reality? That night, Mom continued relentlessly, you and Amelia argued about having a second child. Amelia ran out, upset. That's when the accident happened. That is the truth. She paused, her gaze heavy. Matthew, there's a history of mental illness in our family. Don't you remember what happened to your father? I looked up blankly. His business partner betrayed him, embezzled from the company, Mom recounted calmly. Your father had a breakdown, and he killed him. Mom finished her story, turned, and left me alone in the echoing silence, reeling from the shattering revelations. Amelia, I killed her? I was the reason she ran out? I was the monster all along? The world seemed to collapse inward, crushing me. Later, I was officially diagnosed with a severe mental illness, citing the family history. Instead of a prison sentence, I was committed to a psychiatric hospital. I spent years there, adrift in a sea of confusion. I admitted my memories after the accident were fragmented, unreliable. But the memories before the accident, they felt so real, so vivid. My daughter's cruelty, her manipulations. Yet, Mom insisted they were my own actions, my own past projected onto Melody. Was it me? Or was it her? I became obsessed with trying to untangle the truth, endlessly replaying memories, sketching scenes on walls on scraps of paper, searching for inconsistencies for proof. The doctors observed me with detached pity, shaking their heads. Perhaps I truly was insane. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to accept their reality. I stopped fighting, submitted to the treatments, existed like a walking automaton. Several more years passed. Mom brought Melody to visit me. She had grown into a strikingly beautiful young woman, long cascading dark hair, exquisite features, a poised figure. She smiled at me, her eyes curved into crescents. Dad. Guilt washed over me. Melody, I whispered, ashamed. Daddy's so sorry. I had burdened her with sins that were apparently my own. Melody was silent for a moment, then asked the attendants to leave us alone. When we were finally by ourselves, she spoke again, her voice soft, almost gentle. I forgive you, Dad. I managed a weak smile. We talked for a while, reminiscing about trivial, long-forgotten childhood moments. The conversation felt surprisingly warm, almost normal. But the more we talked, the more insistent my own memories felt, the more certain I became. I couldn't help myself. Melody, I asked, my voice trembling slightly, Did you ever push that little boy? Did you throw that kitchen knife? She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, surprised. She paused, then a slow, chilling smile spread across her beautiful face. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Dad, everything you told the police about me back then. Every single detail. It was all true. My eyes widened in horror. You're wondering why I'm telling you now? She continued, her smile widening, predatory. Because for years you forced me to care for a corpse. Bathe it, dress it. When I resisted, you beat me half to death and locked me in that shed. I begged you, Dad, covered in bruises, starving. But you ignored me. 5 days, Dad. Do you have any idea what those 5 days were like? I will never forget. But guess what? Her eyes glittered with malice. You ended up in my hands. And all the pain you gave me, Dad, I'm going to return it. Piece by piece. My face contorted with rage and dawning horror. Your mother. I choked out, lunging towards her. You killed her, didn't you? A flicker of genuine sadness surprisingly crossed her face. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She didn't answer, simply stood up and turned to leave. I tried to grab her, but she easily evaded my grasp and walked out of the room. Melody! I screamed her name, trembling violently. Doctors and nurses rushed in, restraining me. I immediately calmed myself, holding up my hands to show I was non-threatening. I requested to see my mother. I don't know what discussion took place outside, but a few moments later, Mom entered the room alone. Your eye, I demanded, my voice low and intense. Melody poked it, didn't she? Mom hesitated, then, after a long silence, nodded slowly. Yes. Disbelief warred with fury. You lied to me? All these years. Do you know what your lies did to me? I believed my own memories were false. I almost accepted I was completely insane. Mom looked at me, her eyes filled with a weary sadness. Matthew, under the circumstances, You were already facing a murder charge. The only way to protect Melody to completely clear her name was to shift all the blame onto you, to solidify the narrative that you were mentally ill. I stared at her dumbfounded. And your father, Mom continued calmly, dropping another bombshell, was never mentally ill either. The men in your family, you're born with striking looks, intense personalities, extreme selfishness, but also fiercely loyal to those you love. Dad wasn't mentally ill? I remembered Mom's story: betrayal, murder, judged insane, confined. Just like me. Your father was fiercely protective of me, Mom explained, her voice flat. After he dealt with his partner, I spent everything we had to fabricate the mental illness defense to save him from execution. He's getting out soon, actually. She looked directly at me. And luckily, because we established that family history back then, it made it much easier to convince everyone you had inherited the same condition, even though your breakdown happened later, triggered by grief. Don't worry, she added coolly. In a couple more years, I'll arrange for your release too. Then we can all be together again as a family. Find somewhere quiet where no one knows us, start over. I listened silently until she finished. Then after a long pause I asked, just one more thing. What is it? My voice was dry, raspy. Amelia. How did the accident really happen? Her calm composure finally cracked. She looked down, then back up, her eyes red-rimmed. Does it matter now? Yes, I bit out, clenching my jaw. It matters. She took a deep breath. Melody overheard you and Amelia arguing about having a second child. She ran away. You and Amelia chased after her. Amelia ran into the street without looking. That's the truth. I trembled violently, my teeth grinding together. Melody, she killed Amelia. Mom shook her head firmly. It was an accident, Matthew. You can't blame Melody for everything. You're still defending her. I roared. Melody, she's pure evil. A born monster. Just like you, Mom stated calmly, her eyes dark and unyielding. You were the same as a child, Matthew. Utterly selfish, prone to violence. Do you remember how many people you hurt? The men in your family are all cut from similar cloth. Melody is your daughter. If she's a monster, then so are you. When you get out, she concluded evenly, you'll all learn to live together somehow. She turned and walked away, leaving me shattered by her calm, brutal words. Staring at her retreating back, my expression slowly hardened, twisting into something cold and resolute. Melody, just wait,